What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be discussing who will be the GOAT of each UFC division in 5 years. And real quick, before we get into it, do you guys like me more zoomed in or more zoomed out? What do you think? Put it in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We're grinding on YouTube. All right, let's start off with the flyweights. So for each division, we're going to have 2 honorable mentions at maximum. Some divisions won't need 2 honorable mentions. Some might not even need 1. So for the flyweights, we have no honorable mentions. The GOAT of the flyweights in 5 years will be Demetrious Johnson. He has 11 title defenses, 12 title fight wins, with wins over Ray Borg, Henry Cejudo, John Dotson, Joseph Benavidez. I mean, this dude is very clearly the GOAT of the flyweights and arguably the GOAT of mixed martial arts. In terms of skill set, he might be number 1. And there's nobody that will come close for a really long time, let alone 5 years. If we had to make, the discussion, maybe Brandon Moreno. I mean, he's the only guy there. He's not even the champion right now. Probably Alessandro Pantoja, but no. Nobody's coming close to Demetrious Johnson, so we could move on real quick. There's no real topic of debate here. All right, let's move on to the bantamweights. So my first honorable mention, we're going to have 2. I have Sean O'Malley. He has a fantastic win over Aljamain Sterling, but that's kind of really it. I don't think he won against Petr Yan, and I simply don't see him fighting enough in 5 years to dethrone who I think is the GOAT. Now, Sean O'Malley, he has the skill set too. He could absolutely become the GOAT of the bantamweights, and what a spectacle that would be, but this one's probably the hardest one to judge. So I kind of played it safe with the bantamweights, but my next honorable mention is Merab Dvalishvili. He has fantastic wins over Jose Aldo, Petr Yan, and then, of course, Henry Cejudo from 2 weeks ago. The dude has a really, really good resume for not being a champion already, and he looks simply unbeatable. A lot of you guys would probably assume I'd put him as the GOAT in 5 years, but I didn't. I played it safe, as I said. I'm just not sure if he gets enough fights in 5 years. Does he fight O'Malley next? I'm not too sure. When does that fight go down? Because what if O'Malley goes up and fights an Ilia Topuria? Merab just has to wait. So for the GOAT in 5 years for the bantamweights, I do have Dominic Cruz. I do. He has 5 title fight wins, or 5 title defenses, 7 title fight wins, with wins over Demetrious Johnson, TJ Dillashaw, Uriah Faber. He has an underrated resume, in my opinion. Beating guys like Dillashaw, Demetrious Johnson, Joseph Benavidez, that's really, really solid. Underrated skill set. I think his prime was ruined by injuries as well, so he could have created an even bigger legacy. But this one was close. I was tempted to put Merab Dvalishvili, not as tempted to put Sean O'Malley, but he's definitely in that conversation because he's the champion right now. So I went with Dominic Cruz as the GOAT of the bantamweights in 5 years. All right, let's move on to the featherweights. I do not have an honorable mention here. Right now, the GOAT of the featherweights is Alexander Volkanovski with 5 title fight wins, 6 title defenses, with wins over Max Holloway 3 times, Yair Rodriguez, Brian Ortega, the Korean Zombie. It goes on. This dude is arguably a top 5 UFC fighter of all time, in my opinion, but the GOAT of the featherweights in 5 years, in my opinion, will be Ilia Topuria, the new champion. He has great wins over Bryce Mitchell, Josh Emmett, and of course, Alexander Volkanovski. In terms of skill, I think he is the best featherweight we have ever seen. And I'm not even lying. He has the boxing. He has the wrestling. He has the grappling. I mean, he's simply incredible, guys. He's simply incredible, and I don't see anybody beating him. Who's going to beat him? Yair Rodriguez? Brian Ortega? Come on. Nobody's beating this man. The only guy in the UFC that I think could beat him is an Islam Makhachev. I think Islam and Topuria are the 2 best fighters in the world right now, and I think Topuria is going to create a fantastic resume for himself, and in 5 years, I think he will be the greatest featherweight we have ever seen. Moving on to the lightweights, we have 2 honorable mentions. Let's start off with the least likely, and that is Charles do Bronx Oliveira. Fantastic. My favorite fighter of all time. He has wins over Michael Chandler, Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, Tony Ferguson, Beneil Dariush. The list goes on. And if he could fight Islam Makhachev later in the year, he has a chance of becoming the GOAT. If he beats Islam, maybe beats him in a trilogy fight, and then continues to flush out all these other contenders, he could absolutely be the GOAT of the lightweights. I feel like if he would beat an Islam Makhachev and then beat somebody else, he would be the GOAT in my opinion. My next honorable mention would be Khabib Nurmagomedov, as he is the current GOAT of the lightweights. He has 3 title defenses with 4 title fight wins over McGregor, Gaethje, Poirier. But if things go right, I don't think he'll be the GOAT of the lightweights in 5 years, because the GOAT of the lightweights in 5 years will be Islam Makhachev. And I am absolutely confident of it. He is the best fighter in the world right now. Made quick work of Charles Oliveira. Knocked out Alexander Volkanovski in perfect fashion in their second fight. I mean, in terms of stylistic matchup, this dude is an absolute puzzle. I don't really know how you beat him. You have to knock him out, I guess. But yeah, man, I see him beating a Gaethje. I see him beating Charles or Arman. I see him beating every other contender. I see him beating a Leon Edwards. I just don't see anybody beating this guy. And when it's all said and done, I wouldn't be surprised if he is a top 3 UFC fighter of all time, even maybe in the conversation for the greatest UFC fighter of all time. We just got to see how many times he fights and how long he stays in the UFC. And I'm sorry if this video is kind of all over the place. I wrote a few things down, but I didn't really structure it that well. But you guys get my point. So let's move on to the welterweights. My only honorable mention is Leon Edwards. Champion right now, of course, absolutely phenomenal. And I saw a stat the other day. He is the longest reigning champion in the UFC right now. That's just insane. It feels like yesterday when he knocked out Kamaru Usman. He has great wins, absolutely dominated Colby Covington, beat Kamaru Usman on 2 separate occasions. He's really, really good. Super fun to watch, but the champion, not the champion, the GOAT of the welterweights in 5 years, of course, is going to be George St. Pierre for me. Now, if Leon Edwards could start beating a Shavkat Rakhmonov, a Bilal Muhammad, a Khamzat Chimaev, he could really put himself into that conversation because his wins are so much better than GSP's. I'm not going to lie. However, I have GSP as the GOAT of the welterweights in 5 years. He has 10 title defenses, 12 title fight wins, with wins over Matt Hughes, BJ Penn, Nick Diaz, John Fitch. He might be the GOAT. He might be the GOAT of the entire UFC, of all of mixed martial arts. Simply incredible. When you think of mixed martial arts, you think of George St. Pierre. But I wouldn't be all too surprised if Leon Edwards starts to really push himself into that conversation in 5 years. But in 5 years, I think the GOAT of the welterweights will be George St. Pierre. Let's move on to middleweight. My only honorable mention here is Israel Adesanya. Not the champion anymore, but I feel like he's the only guy that can maybe get himself there in 5 years. Say he fights a Dricus du Plessis, maybe UFC 302, gets that belt back. That would be absolutely huge. Say he beats a Khamzat Chimaev. I feel like if he does those 2 things, if he beats a Dricus and then maybe beats a Khamzat, he's really starting to push himself as the greatest middleweight of all time, because his wins would be so much better than Anderson Silva. But in 5 years, the GOAT of the middleweights, in my opinion, will be Anderson Silva. 10 title fight wins, 11 title defenses, wins over Rich Franklin, Vitor Belfort, Chael Sonnen twice. Probably has the most dominant run in UFC history, even though his wins aren't too fantastic. So I wouldn't be too surprised if an Israel Adesanya gets into that conversation, even though he's in that conversation already right now. But yeah, I have Anderson Silva. I don't think Israel Adesanya will be around too much longer. I think he maybe beats a Dricus, fights a Khamzat, and then maybe he calls it quits. He's said on multiple occasions, that he doesn't really want to fight too much longer. So I'm going to play it safe, and I'm going to go with Anderson Silva as the GOAT of the middleweights in 5 years. Let's move on to the light heavyweights. I have no honorable mention, of course. The GOAT of the light heavyweights in 5 years will be John Jones. 15 title fight wins, 13 title defenses. My gosh, he's got wins over Daniel Cormier twice, Shogun Rua, Alexander Gustafsson twice. He has so many good wins. His resume is absolutely stacked. He's the GOAT. He's the greatest of all time. And I didn't count 2 division champions, so I'm not looking at Jon Jones as a heavyweight either. I'm only going to be talking about his light heavyweight days. But, I mean, this dude's simply incredible. In his prime, just do yourself a favor, go back and watch all of Jon Jones' fights in the UFC. This dude in his prime, in my opinion, is by far the best fighter we have ever seen. He's simply unbeatable in his prime. If you want to throw an Alex Pereira into that conversation, it'd be quite crazy because he's 36. He would have to beat Jamal Hill, Magomed Ankalaev, and so many other contenders. I just don't see anybody becoming the GOAT of the light heavyweights in a very, very, very long time because it's Jon Jones, and it's Jon Jones' division forever. Finally, let's move on to the heavyweights. I have one honorable mention, and that is the GOAT of the heavyweights right now, and that is Stipe Miocic. 6 title fight wins, 4 title defenses, with wins over Francis Ngannou, Junior Dos Santos, and 2 wins over Daniel Cormier. Underrated resume, I think, for Stipe Miocic. He's the GOAT of the heavyweights quite clearly, but I don't think he touches who I think will be the GOAT of the heavyweights in 5 years, and that is Tom Aspinall. That is Tom Aspinall. In terms of skill set, I think he is the best heavyweight we've ever seen. And I'm not even lying. Tom Aspinall is that good. I think if he fights a Jon Jones, he beats a Jon Jones. I don't see a man alive that beats Tom Aspinall. He's super hungry. He wants to fight. And in 5 years, he could get 10 fights in easy. He could get 10 fights in easy. Just got to stay healthy. And I think he continues to just run through people. This was actually one of the easier divisions to pick. I think Tom Aspinall is absolutely going to be the GOAT of the heavyweights in 5 years. He has a good win over Sergey Pavlovich, Sergey Spivak, Alexander Volkov, who's improved a lot. And I see him beating a Jon Jones, beating a Cyril Gane. Who else? Maybe Sergey Pavlovich in a rematch down the line. Jailton Almeida, I think he beats. I think this dude is simply incredible. And really, with no doubt in my mind, I think he's going to be the GOAT of the heavyweights in 5 years. And that's it. Let me know what you think. I appreciate you guys for watching. Peace out.